Moving on, the third recognized category of dysfunctions are orgasm disorders. Now, I've talked briefly about one of these, anorgasmia, but the American Psychiatric Association recognizes this condition as two separate dysfunctions, female orgasmic disorder and male orgasmic disorder. The symptoms are the same for both, a persistent or reoccurring inability to climax despite what would normally be adequate stimulation. But the frequency in which they occur differs greatly. Consider for a moment these statistics. Between 10 and 15% of American women have never experienced an orgasm of any kind. 33 to 50% of women experience orgasm infrequently and are dissatisfied with how often they do. And only 35% of the female population will reach orgasm during intercourse. By contrast, only 2 to 3% of men ever have problems climaxing. When you compare these statistics, it becomes clear just how different the orgasmic responses are between men and women, and why the American Psychiatric Association approaches each separately. Certainly, our physical differences play something of a role in this. Men's genitalia are, by comparison, large and easy to manipulate. If you take an erect penis and apply enough stimulation, 98% of the time you will get an orgasm. It's that simple. However, women's bodies are not quite as conducive to orgasm from just intercourse as men's are. The clitoris is much smaller and does not always receive adequate stimulation for orgasm from just intercourse alone. But there's more contributing to female orgasmic disorder than just anatomical discrepancies. Women more commonly report the need to feel a mental or emotional connection with their sexual partners than men do. Whereas most men can get by on physical stimulation alone, many women tend to be more psychologically involved during intercourse. Perhaps the best example of this mental connection to sex are the case studies of women who've trained themselves to have orgasms through meditative breathing while focusing on a sexual fantasy, with no genital stimulation involved. Once thought to be a myth, this experience has been verified in labs using modern imaging technology. So given the higher dependence on mental stimulation to achieve orgasm, you would expect psychological problems to be a leading cause of orgasmic disorders in women. And you would not be wrong. Not only is female orgasmic disorder the most common sexual dysfunction in women, but over 90% of cases are due to psychological issues. Anxiety over body image, fears of pregnancy, performance anxiety, religious guilt, negative feelings about her partner, social image, such as the fear of being thought of as a slut. All of these can negatively influence a woman's psyche and prevent her from reaching orgasm. The same goes for the small percentage of men who experience male orgasmic disorder. Penis size insecurity, anxiety over lasting long enough, guilt from having had or engaging in an affair, grief over losing a longtime lover. All of these conditions can prevent a man from reaching climax as well. A far more common disorder affecting men than male orgasmic disorder is a condition that could be said to be the polar opposite, premature ejaculation. Whereas male orgasmic disorder is characterized by an inability to orgasm, premature ejaculation is when a man climaxes much sooner than he would like and with little control over it. Given the subjectiveness of this disorder, researchers have traditionally had a difficult time defining it. For example, consider these two case studies. One man interviewed lasted on average less than 60 seconds until he reached climax and was quite happy with his sex life. Whereas in a different case study, a man complained to his doctor that he was suffering from premature ejaculation because he was only able to last for 25 minutes. Given different couples' varying expectations in body chemistry, it can be very difficult to determine what qualifies as normal when it comes to ejaculation control, although the average length of time for men to climax is about 6.5 minutes. This disorder is nearly always caused by some sort of psychological condition. The usual suspects of stress, anxiety, and depression are all capable of triggering premature ejaculation. But even positive feelings, such as anticipation or excitement, can be the root of this disorder. In fact, according to one study, up to 25% of men ejaculate before vaginal penetration can occur during their first sexual encounter because of overexcitement. It is due in part to the wide array of emotions that can cause it, from happy to sad and everything in between, that premature ejaculation is the most common sexual dysfunction reported by men. Finally, we come to sexual pain disorders, of which there are two, vaginismus and dyspareunia. Vaginismus is a painful condition where the muscles around the outer part of the vagina reflexively contract, making penetration impossible. This condition may be generalized, whereby vaginal penetration of any kind is met with reflexive tightening, or it may be situational, occurring only under certain circumstances, such as sex with a specific partner or during gynecological exams. Women suffering from vaginismus have no willful control over this action. It is purely a muscular reflex. But that doesn't mean that the roots of the problem aren't psychologically based. One of the most common causes of primary vaginismus is an overabundance of fear instilled in young girls that first-time sexual intercourse will be painful. This expectation of pain can feed into itself, increasing nervousness and causing the muscles to tense up during intercourse, resulting in painful spasms. That pain will then reinforce the belief that sex is painful, and a vicious cycle is formed. Other causes of vaginismus may include a religious upbringing in which sex is considered wrong or sinful, a history of sexual abuse or rape, domestic violence in the home, or just generalized anxiety. Vaginismus may also result from a condition known as dyspareunia. Dyspareunia is a recurrent or persistent genital pain felt before, during, or after sexual intercourse that is not caused exclusively by lack of lubrication or vaginismus. This condition occurs primarily in women, but will occasionally manifest in men as well. Oftentimes, the causes of dyspareunia are due to physical problems, such as infection or tumors. But when the pain persists even after the primary affliction has healed, it has become a psychological issue. In short, when you learn to associate intercourse with pain, then pain is what you will feel. Remember when I mentioned that there were two other sexual disorders recognized by the American Psychiatric Association that were extremely controversial? These conditions are known as paraphilias and gender identity disorder. Let me talk a bit about each before describing why they're so controversial. Gender identity disorder is when a person experiences significant discontent with the biological sex they were born with. If you've ever heard someone describe themselves as a woman trapped in a man's body, or vice versa, that's gender identity disorder. Oftentimes, people will mistakenly confuse this condition with homosexuality, which is incorrect. Homosexuality is a sexual orientation, which is basically what you find sexually attractive in other people. Gender identity, on the other hand, is how you view yourself in terms of gender. What confuses people even more is that since sexual orientation and sexual identity are two separate aspects of personality, it is possible for a person to be both homosexual and have gender identity disorder at the same time. So even though some men like to joke about being a lesbian trapped in a man's body, there are people who really feel that way, and it can be a very depressing and lonely state for them.